Hello, hello.
And we're
Good.
live,
Yes.
hopefully.
Yeah. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to all of you. I'm Adita.
And I'm Darkov. And I wish you everyone a very good morning. It's raining here, or evening, or good night, whatever.
Pick your poison. Today we'll talk a bit about cultural differences and how we should approach them when it comes to communicating in English as a global language or communicating on video and the combination of two.
Exactly. So, things first, if you see us at all, just say hello in the comments, and we'll be very happy to know that we're actually transmitting anywhere.
Yes.
And regarding cultural differences, what do you mean by that?
I mean, the variety of different cultures that we come from and that shape the way we think and communicate.
Okay. So is it basically between cultures as in territory or different types of people? Like in differing, we have different cultures in different companies, for example, also.
Yeah, I think we can talk about this term more globally or locally. Um, we could even talk about differences in generations or subcultures in
Oh, yeah.
that way. So it is a lot of things to consider when talking about culture. We seem to be
Morning,
live.
Uri.
Okay.
We seem to be live. Okay, that's great.
Thank
Well,
you, Rai.
I'd say the world as itself is kind of a global village at the moment. And what you mentioned about differences in different generation might be actually what is more of a difference between cultures between different generations than cultures between even continents. Would you say that?
Yeah, yeah, that's one that I notice more, to be honest, lately, than actually the ones that we normally talk about that have to do with flags and different religious backgrounds or different territories that we come from.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I can mostly see it in video terms, where there's quite a difference between when people. Okay, I won't mention these generation names because I get confused. What X, Z, boomerangs, whatever they mention them. So I won't mention. But let's say people who grew up with TVs tend to see video as extension of a TV, and they tend to really be formal and need to express themselves formally, need to be completely controlled. Like they're on TV, while younger generations, which grew with, let's say, video social networks like TikTok and Reels on Instagram, they seem to just very casually just turn on the camera whenever they want, even if it's in bed or where they're half asleep. So it's no problem for them at all that they need to be somehow with perfect makeup, hair, and everything. So I see it there. Uh, how do you see it regarding English?
Well, obviously, vocabulary changes when we go into different generations and also subcultures. And I'd say we are quite diversified when it comes to different subcultures nowadays. You
Mm,
talked about TV, we used to be served one culture for all in a way, right? So
yes.
that made references much easier to understand between generations and even territories. nowadays you might be a fan of a certain genre or a certain show, and other people have never heard of it, and you want to make a joke. You're used to it, you have your own group where everyone understands this little word that you use, but outside of it, people are blank. They have no clue what you're talking about. So I say we have to be quite more careful when we're saying something that's very specific when it
Yeah.
comes to a joke, right, or a word that we're using. So that's one noticeable difference. And the second one is attitude towards technology. Since
Mhm.
I teach online, the way people use technology, the way they approach it, and the time it takes to get people to warm up to changes, it's very dependent on their generation, I'd say.
Okay, could you elaborate a bit more about this warm up? What do you mean by this warm up with technology?
Yeah, for example, let's say AI chatbots are very popular nowadays. They're a very good tool in learning a language. And if you ask a younger student whether they would like to practice that way, they are much more likely to be enthusiastic about it. Oh, yeah, like which one do you use? How can I use this? Right. And when we talk about older generations, they are more likely to pause and be like, well, I want to talk to a person. That's not
Mhm.
something that I want to do. How does that work? Will that be too difficult for me to use? And that's not something that they're necessarily asking, but they might be thinking. And you can see that, that they will have a certain amount of fear there, for instance. And of course, these are all generalizations. Some of my most enthusiastic students are from the older generations, but there is a tendency there. There is a difference that can be noticed when you work with a larger number of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. But I don't know if it's the same on your part, but what I tend to notice once people open up with these newer technologies they are not accustomed to, they really don't have problem with it, but it needs time to get used to.
Yes, it's something that we keep repeating, isn't it? Once you step out of your comfort zone once or twice, the third time is relatively simple, but those first steps can be a bit more complex.
Yeah, yeah, that's for sure. So when people are actually expressing themselves in English as not their first language. I still working on that first, second, native, not native. Okay, as their second language or third. How would they know that they express themselves appropriately towards different culture, be it generation-wise or even culture, as in territory or customs?
Right. Well, if we're using this more complicated definition of culture, then there's a lot of things to think about. And unless you're talking to a very small audience, research will be difficult to do beforehand. So I'd say ask your audience after you've interacted with them for some feedback. For instance,
Mhm.
research is always the way to go, but you might need to approach this research in different ways. If you know who will be listening, if you know that these people are not people that you normally communicate with, be it company culture. I don't know. Perhaps if you need to talk to a lot of IT people and you don't know how to handle them, you can ask someone like Darko who has experience and say, is there something I should take into consideration when I talk to these people, right? Do they have a certain way of speaking that I should take into consideration and expect? And should I modify anything? So that's one thing to do. Second, if we're talking about English as a global language and people who are listening might be speakers of other languages, then trying to be clear and simple not using too much jargon or idioms is something that's um, quite a mindful thing to do, because I think a lot of people believe that using a lot of jargon or long sentences will make them appear more intelligent, but it's not necessarily the truth. And I think if you're communicating ideas, it's your responsibility to try and be mindful of other
Mhm.
people being able to understand what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, and from what you're saying, I would summarize it as just play as safe as possible. Perhaps you don't even know who will be your audience, or who will be, if it's some kind of a conversation, you don't know who will be on the other side of the table. So maybe sometimes you don't have time to prepare exactly for the other person or the other side.
Yes. And um, I'm curious to see your perspective as a somebody who has a lot of experience with video creation. I'd say all of these considerations are more important when we talk about academic contexts. And of course, as a teacher, those are very familiar to me. Webinars, conferences, and such, and playing it safe. I think it's useful advice there, but people can seem inauthentic or rigid if they use this approach in different contexts. So, what's your experience there?
Well, I'd say it's very similar in video, actually. Like in real life, when you need to play it safe, you just try to be somewhere in the middle. But when you know who your audience is, or who will be on the video call, then of course you should prepare accordingly. Like you said, with the IT crowd, you see someone who is trying to sell them something in a suit, that is not going to go, because they will just see, okay, it's too formal. No, that is not for us. He doesn't know what he's talking about, because we in IT, we work with something different, and we need to be really informal in our clothes. So this is how it's perceived by them. And regarding global cultures, I think the concept of social bubble, I don't know if you're accustomed to it. So, everyone has different distance between themselves when they're talking, and it's in person, but it's also in video. So, if this culture that's different than yours have a different definition of their social bubble, distance between when their people are talking, they could be intimidated if you're like too close to them. So even on video, or they seem distanced when they're too far away. So this is something that is really small, but could make a really big impact regarding how your message will come across. So this is what actually is important regarding this. And regarding, well, maybe not English, but language in global, I'd say informality or formality of how you express yourself is also important. I don't know if English is global there, but we tend here in Balkans curse a lot, and really people don't even notice it. But I guess some cultures are not really that much accustomed to it, and they could freak out because, "Whoa, what is this person saying? He's so rude."
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to video, I was just, while you were talking, I was considering whether we are the middle ground now when it comes to the distance from the
Uh,
camera.
we are
Where should I
somewhere
go?
in the European,
Yeah.
like when two people meet and when they talk, they tend to be in Europe at least to see themselves half a body. So this is basically it, but it also depends on how good you know the person. So if you are not really that known to person. Coming too close will sometimes be too intrusive. So this is also plays a role here. But when you talk to people that you don't know well, it depends on the culture how well they perceive how close you are to them.
Right.
And you
So
can be too close or too far. So you need to just get it right.
in
So this
future videos, we'll
distance,
just get gradually closer to the camera.
so this distance might not be really well perceived in Asia, perhaps, or
Okay.
in the US. So there is differences there. It's really a small difference, but it could make really an impact.
All right. I'll be curious if there's any feedback from the audience. Do you want us to get closer or sink further back into the background?
Yeah, like
That's something
for
new for
really
me.
Mediterranean countries like Italy or Spain, I'm sure they want to be closer. So
That's quite interesting. Well, if it bothers you, if we're intimidating you or we're too far at this point, maybe minimize the video and just listen to us. We're okay with that. We wouldn't want to make you uncomfortable.
yes,
And when it comes to formality, I think what you said, if you know your audience, and we are talking in a kind of business context on LinkedIn primarily, but also on YouTube, I guess. But we have an audience in mind, and we set this up to be casual because we want people to interact and to feel comfortable with interacting, unlike a lot of the maybe more uptight academic approaches, which
exactly.
might be more suitable for other audiences, other industries, other ideas when it comes to podcasts. So
Yes,
it's important to consider, right, who you're talking to and what works for your audience. So we are open to feedback there as well. If you want us to suit up a bit,
yeah, for sure. So if anyone has any comment or wants to just have or has a question regarding this, you're more than welcome.
yeah, absolutely. If you don't want to say anything publicly or you're still sleeping and you'll be listening to this later on, you can always chat with us about how you see us and what you like or dislike in that regard.
Yes, and in English language, would you say are there any big no-nos that you should really avoid when you have people on the other side that you don't know which culture they are, which generation they will be?
Now we're talking about generations a lot. People will think
Yeah,
that we are.
but like I say, for me, it looks at the moment it seems that generations of globally have different cultures, not that much really territorially or locally spotted. So, like the generation that is born 15, 20 years ago is globally very similar due to the technical differences, like I say, some people that need to get accustomed to new technology. There is quite a difference if you really did were born with it. There is I don't know if you heard of it. There is was okay, I'll remember it later. There is a term that just describes people who were born with their uh, screens in their hands.
Digital
And
natives.
yeah, digital natives. Oh, thank you. My mind stopped working there. Digital natives and analog natives. So there is a difference between two, not that much generation, but completely different worlds of people.
Right. Yeah, as I mentioned, this is something that I've been noticing more and more recently as I had a few students um, feeling quite exasperated with the pace of technological progress. They feel a bit left behind in a way, like no one's taking the time to explain things to me. Everyone expects me to just embrace all of the changes and to adapt and to find different ways of doing things. I just, recently learned how to use this app, and now I'm forced to use another one and another one. So, that's something that I've been thinking about, and how to make this easier for my students, because I do come from a younger generation that sometimes forgets how hard it can be if that's not something that you feel comfortable with. I'm very
Hmm.
excited about technological change. I want to try everything, but it's not
Yeah,
necessarily
new
true for
app,
everyone.
great. Let's try. What? How it's working?
Exactly, right. So when you are introducing new things and now everyone's playing around with AI, it's something that I think about. I try to think about different tutorials or different ways to sell as well the idea of whatever it is and what the purpose is, so that the students kind of know what to expect. We have a comment from Andy. That's an interesting conundrum.
Hi, Andy.
Uh, she works with AI, so I suppose she's probably commenting on that.
Yeah, yeah. So it's quite a difference there.
And to go back to the earlier question, or the more general one is to avoid generalizing and using stereotypes, right?
Hmm.
You shouldn't be saying, "Oh, all of you Croats are like this," because one, it's not true. It's never really true for everyone, and two, it's not respectful.
Hmm.
So let other people talk about their culture and their background and how they perceive it, because five different people from even the same city might be telling you different things. They have different experiences. So I think if you are going to generalize, do it in a way that includes your experiences, and that always includes this disclaimer: this is my perspective, right? This is what I've noticed, and this is what seems to be true for me. But of
Hmm.
course, others can and even should disagree, because this is where you learn new things. Steer away
And
from
always
taboo
be open
topics.
for other opinions, and maybe correct
Absolutely.
yourself if you see some new facts.
Yes, like that's, it seems to be an obvious one, right? But people sometimes have a hard time apologizing or saying, "Oh, I was wrong about that." Okay, you know, it's it's good to get a different perspective. We can't be right all the time, and if we think that we are, something's probably wrong. We're not listening.
We like to be always right in our own mind, but it's not always the truth.
Absolutely, yeah. It's probably rarely the truth, but it's not something that's comfortable to always keep in mind. And yeah, I was gonna say, when it comes to certain topics like politics, religion, it's always smart to try to avoid these things if they're not necessary. Of course, if you want to discuss a certain idea, if you're talking about the ethics of something, then you need to consider, people's different backgrounds. But then you have to do it very carefully, mindfully. You need to ask questions, and you need to kind of find that middle ground with the audience, see where they are comfortable. And active listening is a skill that's needed there.
Yeah, yeah. I'd say it's really all these points that you said actually in video the same. So you should just look how others are responding, especially regarding religion and politics. It's not really good to have any kind of symbols around you because visually you're there. So even if you have some kind of a cross in the background, it might not really come good across other people because they're really passionate about religion or politics. So just try to be neutral about it, at least until you go know each other better. So yeah, this is something that really should be avoided, unless you are talking to a specific kind of people, your kind of people that you agree with on these topics. So this is how you really should get used to starting the conversation. Not really without too much of a symbolism regarding the pictures around you or things that really are on the wall or on your clothing.
What would you say about this phenomenon now that we are experiencing this moment where you don't really see your audience? You're not quite sure who's listening. We've just started with our videos, and we might not be sure if we said something appropriate. Let's say that we tested the ground, we talked about something slightly controversial.
Okay.
What I see on YouTube, for instance, I see a lot of those videos that apologize about what they said in the previous video and such. And how do you feel about that? How can people prevent these situations when they're not sure who's listening? And, maybe they think that they covered their bases and they were being respectful, but they said
Okay.
something controversial.
I'd say you cannot be respectful to everyone. So this is not possible, and you should always be yourself. What you think at that moment should be expressed this way, not forcefully, but you should say how you feel about some things and what you think about them. Should you apologize if you later are corrected and see a different way? Perhaps. But I don't think you should go that much in a way uh, to be liked by everyone, so everybody agrees with you. I don't think that's the point. There will always be someone who doesn't agree with you, and that's okay. It's in real life the same. So not everyone likes you, and it's because you have some attitude towards some certain things. They have a different attitude, and this is why we are all unique. And I don't see it as a problem in video or globally talking about it. You should be respectful to other opinions, of course, but you shouldn't start apologizing from the start for everything you said or will say. I don't think that there is a point in that.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, right? We talked about always trying to be respectful. And that's something that I think if you are authentically respectful to difference, I think that comes across. I think people can notice that. And you are not likely to have serious issues. But you are allowed to have strong opinions and to talk about your values and to discuss things in a way that you find appropriate. And yeah, there's no way that everyone will like it.
Yeah,
So it's something
and
to
if
be
you
prepared
feel
for.
and if you feel really strong about some things, there is no point in apologizing for someone that thinks different. You're different in your opinion, and this is okay.
Absolutely. Right. It's useful to acknowledge that
Mhm.
some people might feel differently and that it is okay, and to invite discussion and sharing of opinions rather than saying, I'm 100% right and that's
Yeah.
it. But otherwise, yeah, I think a lot of us, especially if we're new to being visible, find it difficult to express what we really think. And there are ways of doing this respectfully. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Yes, and of course, you need to be clear from the start who you're talking to. Uh, even in this situation when actually we are just discussing between ourselves and we don't know who the audience is or who is looking at the moment, we need to be aware that we have certain audience that we want to talk to, and just to talk to them. If somebody is offended by it, they are not our kind of people, let's say it this way.
Exactly. And for those of you who are joining from LinkedIn, in case we don't see your comment right now, we apologize. We're really not ignoring you.
Let's check if there are any. Some
I'm
there are
checking.
some.
It seems to be okay, but I tend to always find one or two extra after the event. So
Yeah,
we
it
really
just shows
try.
up later. So
Yes. Yes, please keep that in mind. We are not ignoring anyone. We are trying to interact with all of you. Nobody's been disrespectful so far. So if we don't reply, it's not that. It's just, things are not coming through for some reason.
yes, it is going better through YouTube, but that's another story.
Yes, I think that's something that could be discussed as well in the future. The culture of LinkedIn versus YouTube versus other social media. I think there's different ways of talking to people through different media as well.
Okay, I wouldn't say there is quite a difference between LinkedIn and YouTube, but LinkedIn and Facebook, there could be some real cultural differences there in way of talking or presenting yourself, which is quite interesting because we have cultural differences there, but the same people are behaving differently on one platform and differently on the other platform. So that's quite interesting in its own way.
It is, isn't it? Right? There are unwritten rules as well when it comes to these social spaces, and people respect them, but respecting them means something very different in different contexts.
Yes. Okay. We have. Oh, we have a question.
We might be holding back now as we're worried to be disrespectful no matter what we ask. Yeah, there's an element of that as well. People are afraid of being themselves because nobody wants to be disliked.
Yeah, thank you, Tina, for this comment. Yeah, and I'd say it's not really the way to do it. You don't need to be liked by everyone, but that's my opinion. I'm sure there are many who will disagree with it.
I don't think it's possible to be liked by everyone. So it's not, I don't think it should be our goal. I think our goal should be to make connections with people who are sharing our values, and that, respect is one of them, definitely. But, when people say this, they're often talking about controversial topics. And I do believe that we need to educate ourselves about the way to talk about these things, and not to be inflammatory. We don't need further conflict in our lives. If we want to learn from each other and we're very different, then there's a balance there that is hard to find. But this can be true about small things. We kind of get into our heads and think nobody's interested in the things I'm interested in, right? Who will want to hear about this? And from my experience, when I do share something about myself, people tend to be interested. There is someone always who can relate. And this is where, the holding back can really hurt you. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I'd say there are quite a lot of cultural differences between that, between generations also. But people tend to react quite positively when you open up, and most of us don't expect it that way. But there also needs to be a balance how much to open up. We probably don't need to share what we eaten for breakfast, brunch, lunch, and everything. So
Even
that could be
salted
too much.
all millennials, including me now.
So then there's also a thing called too much of being open. But yeah, I'd say we should be more open in general.
Yeah, and it's something that we can do gradually, just like we do when we build friendships. There's another comment from Tina. I didn't mean to be liked by everyone. I would personally be very sorry to offend someone unintentionally. But yes, that can be the reason to miss out on so much.
Yeah, okay. You could offend someone, but they should also just take it that there are people different than them. So if they're offended, but by someone who has different opinions or uh, even experiences in life, that is, I'd say, their problem, not yours.
Yeah, I think the key word here is unintentionally. If you did something unintentionally, then you should express that, and I think there should be a level of understanding there that perhaps online is lacking sometimes, especially because we talk in short form, in few words, and then people can misinterpret things in ways that are sometimes get out of hand.
Yeah, yeah. Tina said, I'd say we have a long way to go and a lot of learn, a lot to learn.
Yes.
Yes, but I'd say there is a tendency to walk over eggshells over everything, and at the moment, just not to offend anyone unintentionally, and I'd say it's too much.
Yeah, it can be very difficult to find the balance there, I'd say. But I'll go back to just being mindful and intentional about these things. And if we are, I'd say, from what I've seen from people I listen to and follow, who might share political opinions and things that we said. If you don't know the people, be mindful. There are ways of doing it that are respectful, that do ask questions and take other perspectives into consideration. So
Yes.
learning and experimenting is the way to go, because we just talked about generations. New generations are coming. There's no stopping and saying, now I've learned it all, and I know how to act with everyone. I'm
You
safe.
realize, okay, I was a new generation and I'm old. Okay. You need to get accustomed to
Exactly.
this also.
Exactly. We'll get into those shoes. you know? And that's just one of the things that's changing. So, yeah, we need to be mindful and respectful, but also speak our minds as well when we think it's important. Think about the consequences and what you're trying to do there. And if that's more important than the kind of negative um, reactions that you might get, then maybe that's a way to calculate whether it's worth it.
Yes, exactly. Okay, we are already out of time or in overtime, let's say this way. So we could wrap it up. I hope everyone had a good time. Maybe learned something new, maybe not. Maybe see something new. Maybe someone got offended.
Oh my
What
goodness.
can we do?
We didn't mean it. So,
Yeah, there is this excuse. Why? How do you know anyone got offended? So,
no, I was talking about intentionality. So, I definitely didn't try. All right, everyone. Thank you for being with us. If you have something to share in the chat, it will still be open after the event. Maybe you'll be listening later on. If you have something controversial to share, this is a safe space, so maybe you can try the comments and test the waters that way.
exactly.
We won't get offended.
No, at least I won't be offended by anything, but okay.
All right, test that first.
No problem. See you all next time? Do we have something for next time?
Um,
We didn't define anything yet, right?
It's going to be a big surprise.
Oh, like a big surprise. Okay. See you all.